Okay, so continuing my video on narcissistic grandparents. Um, it can happen at any time where they can try to take your children or whatever. Be it maybe you just lost a job, maybe they've talked you into taking care of your kids for a while, or anything they can, and then go back as soon as they can if they find anything or a lie about any mess up that you have made, and just basically make you into this individual that cannot care, or make you believe that you cannot care or are capable enough of caring for your own children, or whatever it may be. You know, maybe they will blame that, like, the relationship that you're in with your partner is dangerous and bad, and your kids should not be there. This happened to me back in my 30s, and I remember, even though it was a bad relationship, they really kind of made me believe that it would be the best to sign a guardianship to them. And that's one of the biggest mistakes I ever made. The same thing happened when I was very young, in my early 20s, with my oldest daughter, and how a narcissistic family came in on the father's side and just swooped down, and before I even realized what I was doing, it was too late. And not thinking, a lot of times as we are victims and we are caught up with these people constantly pounding in our heads, maybe even all our lives, that we are not capable enough of taking care of things ourselves, you know, and we have to rely on these people to do it all for us. And if we do not comply, they can take it away just as quick. You know, a lot of that can really just harm in all different ways your children and yourself, to the point of even devastation. You know, you have to remember that their power is big only when you give more power to it. They're actually very small, and their power is very weak-based if you know what you're dealing with. Most oftentimes people do not, so I'm really glad I'm learning this stuff today. But in the last video, I did not finish my story. What happened was, after I told my mother that I was having Thanksgiving with my kids at my home, after I left the room, began screaming and crying bloody murder like a banshee. And as I walked into the other room, playing the victim, and of course they have control over those kids like that, because those kids truly believe that these people that I'm hurting these people, and that's what my parents make them believe. And that what I said to her was probably a lot bigger than what I really said to her, like I was out to hurt her. But the truth was that as you begin to stand up to it, they oftentimes will, like what happened to me was, when she started screaming bloody murder, I tried, like, I know you're not supposed to do this, but I started talking about the way that she was trying to win with manipulation, the tactic that she was using, and not to play into it. But of course, my daughter goes and runs right in with her and shoves me. And then when you know, when they got you all riled up and worked up, when you're upset that they are doing all of this chaotic crap and being so extremely black and toxic, and everything up there is coming off just a horrible feeling of negativity, and then they're throwing it all on you, and then they're saying that the reason they're upset is because you're a dangerous individual, um, and that my daughter, my own 17-year-old daughter, was told me that, threatened to call the police on me. And right there, they have done this trick before where they did call the police, my parents, when I was brushing my daughter's hair one time, and my daughter was very young. She was like 5. Um, and when I was there, I was brushing her hair at the kitchen table, and all of a sudden, my father asks for something like some nose spray or something that I had in my room, and I was extremely tired. I worked the whole night, and I told him to go and get it himself. He came up to me with a huge, menacing, intimidating finger in my face, and automatically, because I was at the time dealing with a malignant, psychopathic boyfriend up in the city where I was working at, and when he would come at me like that and would beat me, it was my CPTSD or PTSD instinct to come up and defend myself. So I whacked his finger with the brush and started telling him to not come at me like that. And then all of a sudden, he was on me, on the floor, on top of me, and was beginning to hurt me. And I defended him off me, like I kicked him in the, you know what, quite a few times. Just trying anything I could to get this big man off of me. And meanwhile, my mother is calling the police, and I ended up going to jail because I was the one that did it first, I guess. When I told them that I was just defending myself, that does not fly when you're in a legal matter like that. A lot of times, even with beatings, a lot of times it's basically like whoever calls the police first. So I found that out kind of the hard way there. And then they tried to, a lot of times what they do with a scapegoat like that sticks up for themselves and does not take their beatings of any kinds, they will outcast you. And the whole time telling my children that I was a really dangerous individual before they have told them that I needed drugs and mental help because I was a really dangerous person. And for many, 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 many years now have kept them away from me, and really made them believe that all these things were true. These are just some of the manipulative tactics that they use to just basically outcast you from the family then, and keep the members inside of it for their source of supply, like vampires feeding even off children and stuff. And you know, keeping people around them that are just like them. So really sad but true. I know I'm gonna have to grieve this one, but also it's really best that if you at all can, if children are not involved with these types of individuals, to move far away, like far, far away, and to where they cannot keep any of that going with you, and no phone calls or anything. Just move on with your life. Find better relationships. You know, do your recovery work, and just leave. because they set out to destroy you. It's just their mental sickness working, where it's like PTSD that never shuts off, like a strong state of it. And there's nothing you can really do about it. Fighting makes it worse. Being around it makes it worse. They are set out to destroy you, and just keeping their little family unit thing going. So in any way they can, they don't even care. I mean, they say that they do, but it's just a trick. Don't listen to it. And you can always still love these people in your own way. Maybe they, were nice sometimes to you. But it was all with a threatening, scare tactic end to it, where they ruled you with a hand or a fist, or whatever, and where they'll cut you off from having any joy or real happiness or real freedom of thought and choice and things like that, which is a lot of times why we become so anxious and depressed, even to the point of suicide. Don't think for an instant that those people are not calculative and they don't know what they're doing. Even if it's subconsciously, it does not matter. It is still all the same, and it's going to happen all the same. So, my last child is almost to the age of 18, and she plans to go to college. A lot of times what they do is they will even promise your children and buy them things like cars and spoil them rotten, but then oftentimes don't even have to, part of the time don't even come through on all their bigger promises. So it is what it is. But my kids know, and I often tell them that I do teach this stuff online. And sometimes my youngest will even listen to a blog I write out, but I try to keep those more of an even keel, where they're peaceful and they are not aggressive towards narcissists or victims or people in general. I just try to keep a more peaceful approach. Because when you center in peace, that's really what you're going to start getting more of. You're going to start just kind of over here instead of over here where the narcissist is. Not you, puppy. You're sweetie. So, anyways, yeah, they'll do it if you're sick. I remember a part of the reason what happened to me when it started was I felt sick with IBS, and I had a really hard time functioning for a while, and still struggle when you have any kind of sickness or disease like that. Although you can overcome and go on with the right diet and help, just like you can change an addiction, and that's what I wanted to talk about as well. That I see, because she was so menacing this time, it was almost like, because they do get crazier and they start doling out the punishments more, or whatever it is, or sticking that foot up towards you, like when you are a threat to their family unit. And I think what really is threatening them right now is the fact that I'm becoming an addiction coach. And there's a lot of addiction happening out there in that family unit. Even one of my own kids it is using. And they let it, and one of my brothers, and they just let it happen. Even my kids will comment on it, like, because my brother is the worst, and they will just even when confronted that he is on drugs or whatever, will totally deny it and make excuses for him, and just let them continue with what they're doing in their own house. But this is another way that they can keep people under their control, because they're easier to control because they are weak with an addiction of any kind. And they're always there to offer to take care of them and look after them, as long as it's under their every control, you know, and the way that things are done in that house. So, yes, this is a huge threat to them again. So I'm really not surprised that I am being booted out more severely this time. Although I try to sneak there as much as I can to not let my children forget and be brainwashed to forget me, and just keep right on telling them that they're worthy and they're enough. And no matter if some people are beating on them or whatever, and I'm not able to turn it in and cannot get some of my children to turn it in, you know, which often happens, because even when those grandchildren are there with whoever it is, or these kids are with whoever it is, don't even think that those kids have it easy there, because they are abusing those kids as well. Be it maybe they're always telling your kid that they're fat, they need to lose weight, or they're just assholes, or trying to get you to believe that these children, they just, when they start really degrading and using that devaluing level to make everybody believe that they're not good enough, and the only way to be good enough is by having these people feed them with more love bombing, and then just taking it away and maybe neglecting them altogether, like being in the other room and watching TV all night, not maybe throwing up maybe a meal here or there for them, but there's not any real talk going on, or communication, or especially love of any kind.Maybe just a measly little pat on the head or whatever, you know, but there's no real connection there. That's extremely harmful to anybody that has to go through that. Extremely. So, you know, I try not to get too worried out here, but of course it eats at your heart and soul when, you know, you might not be able to get enough for the courts. I know that because of CPS, I will never be able to get my children back. And of course, they don't want to come back. They want to stay there. Because, number one, it's a large house. My son hides upstairs. And they think that that's enough. And, or the other one, just, they have her completely brainwashed that theirs is better than mine. You know, and with my record, you know, I have no chance. But still, I am still in there, just communicating with her some of these things that are happening and how they are being treated and kind of what's going on. I do not stop. That is the important role for you to them, you know. And maybe some of these children, as they get older, become even narcissists themselves after all this trauma that they've been through. Where they stop being connected to their feelings and they cannot shut off those PTSD levels. You know, or whatever the case may be, if it's just chemically handed down. to these that lose a connection with themselves and just lose that hope. You know, when they're like those rats in a cage where the electric shocker goes so many times that they just finally just lay down and just let it happen instead of going to the other side where there's no shocker, you know? Or like that frog in the pan that sits in there, and when the heat is turned up slowly, or that manipulation, don't realize when it just kind of melts there in the pot, because that is how we become helpless, codependent victims, or even worse than that, becoming